Hello and welcome to South Asia Monitor. Today we are doing a discussion on what is perhaps the most topical subject for the whole world, which is the emphatic victory of candidate Donald Trump in the recent US election. His victory and the fact that he would be sworn in as the 47th president of the United States. And this for him will be a second term, since he was also the 45th president after President Barack Obama. There are many layers to how Trump 2.0 is being viewed across the world. Domestically, it is evident that the implications are going to be almost tectonic, because for the first time, we will have a US president who would be totally in control of the United States and the infrastructure of governance, meaning the executive, the legislature, and the fact that the judiciary also has been handpicked by the Republican Party. What does this mean for this part of the world? That is the focus for our discussion. Mr. Trump is not new to South Asia. He has visited the region in his first term. He has also made a number of statements about South Asian nations and their leaders during his first term and subsequently. To just unpack this and get a better sense, we have an eminent panel, all black belts in their own way. Let me identify them as I see them on the screen. We'll start with Beena. Beena Sarwar is the co-founder of SAPAN, the South Asia Peace and Action Network, and she also keeps the SAPAN news network going, and in many ways keeps the region connected. Thank you, Beena, for being here. We also have Beena's in Boston, for the record, Boston, USA. We have Mayank Chhaya, veteran journalist, author, painter, part-time chef, technologically very savvy, and Mayank is also a very dear friend. I must put that in parentheses. He is currently in Chicago, and he's just recently written about the US elections and what the Trump presidency could mean for the region. Thanks, Mayank, for being on board. And we also have Mr. Sugeswara Senadira. He is a very eminent name and figure in Sri Lanka. He's been an advisor to successive prime ministers, and he's also a friend of Sam. We have benefited from his inputs and advice over the years. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Senadira. And finally, we have Tarun Basu, veteran journalist in the Indian context, has covered international affairs for years. And he's also been in the US recently. He's done a lot of work with the diaspora, and he's got a book about the Kamala Harris phenomenon in US politics. So with that, what I'll do is I thought I'd request you all to make some opening remarks, and I'll just leave one little caveat, if I may, that we are looking not just at South Asia, but Southern Asia. And that in turn would enable us to look at the Indian Ocean, the Indo-Pacific, and China, and parts of Southeast Asia, all of which have a locus as far as the extended Southern Asian region is concerned. So with that as the broad background, Mayank, can I request you to go first and perhaps give us some broad brushstrokes about Trump 2.0 and how the United States sees South Asia? Mayank?
Thank you so much, Uday. It's an absolute pleasure to be on this panel of such eminence. You, of course, Tarun is a dear, dear friend of long-standing, outstanding journalist. Beena, a recent friend, but an outstanding journalist and a dear friend. And Sugi, of course, we go back very long way. Brilliant journalist and an outstanding administrator and a dear friend. So thank you all for inviting me. If you don't mind, I think I would read what I had written, a little bit of that on this particular aspect. I hope that's okay. So if my eyes dart back and forth, please don't mind me. Washington's sanguinely friendly embrace of New Delhi in recent years is not likely to lose any of its warmth with the re-election of Donald Trump as America's 47th president. If anything, the much talked about personal friendship between Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi is expected to add to the ease of bilateral diplomacy, in my view. In any case, Indo-US relations have been on the upswing for the last nearly quarter century. It began with the seminal visit of former President Bill Clinton. He was, of course, president then in March of 2000, after a gap of nearly a quarter century, when Jimmy Carter visited in 1978. And since then, the relations have progressively strengthened and become more robust each year under Clinton's successors, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Trump, President Joe Biden. So it's a continuum that I think will have no significant hiccups as Trump 2.0 takes over in Washington. In a sense, that improvement has paralleled the dramatic rise of China in the last 3.5 decades, now practically rivaling the United States in its global influence. It is in that Chinese context that it's reasonable to expect that Trump in the White House will not materially change the direction of the bilateral ties. As long as Washington perceives Beijing as its global nemesis, and the prospects of that being so is likely to continue for the next 2-3 decades, in my judgment, I don't think we can expect any US administration to risk significantly diluting its relations with India in the foreseeable future. And I think the Trump administration is expected to broadly continue the outgoing Biden administration's studiedly pragmatic approach towards the Modi government. In a contrasting style to Biden, who was deeply engaged personally and elevated India-US relations on several fronts, Trump is expected to be less engaged with South Asia as a region and India as its center, other than his favorite fixation on tariffs and a couple of other issues. He has been explicit in calling India a major abuser in bilateral trade relations and has threatened a blanket tariff structure on all imports from anywhere in the world, including India. It remains to be seen, though, whether he actually carries them out to the extent that he has threatened between 20% for the rest of the world and about 60% for China. Other than that, I think he's likely to be very amiable towards New Delhi. But given his radical plans to refashion America in his vision, he will be considerably preoccupied domestically. And as a result, India is not likely to feature immediately in the scheme of things. And finally, not being a globalist, I think Trump is unlikely to pay any significant attention to the larger South Asian neighborhood of Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, and Nepal. I think he is just not the international type. So I don't expect him to be hands-on in that area at all.
Okay, Mayank, hold that thought. Thanks. I think now on that, it's a very good segue to get Dina in. Dina, what Mayank is saying about President Trump when he assumes office, that he would be preoccupied with domestic issues, and that perhaps when we look at the region, Pakistan, Afghanistan may not figure very prominently. What do you make of, Trump 2.0 and this very troubled region? I mean, Pakistan, Afghanistan continues to be very troubled by some very old internal security issues. And then we have Iran next door. So all of that put together. Dina?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on this show. It's wonderful to be here with all of you who are linked in some way or the other to Sapan News as well. I just want to start by saying that Trump 2.0 is likely to be Trump 1.0, but worse for America and for the world, I think. I will just say that. That I think that it's his personal relationship with Modi, his the way that the two of them supported each other during their electoral campaigns, as Mayank has pointed out, that whole relationship and holding up of each other, which also points to this other thing. And so what I'm seeing is actually the people that came together, the electorate that came together for Trump 2.0, particularly this time, includes right-wing conservative Muslims. It includes the right-wing conservative Hindus who subscribe to the Hindutva ideology. It includes right-wing conservative Christians, that whole thing. So basically what I see is that he has come in on the back of fear of change by the right-wing conservative communities across religions, across ethnicities, who don't like the fact that when they elected, then some of them had elected Barack Obama. They don't like the fact that when they elected a black man to the White House, LGBT gay marriage became legal. They were like, wait a minute, we're okay, we're very liberal. We don't mind a black man being in the White House, but we don't want our sons and daughters getting married to same-sex people. One, for example, the abortion issue, that's another example. Now, coming to, and of course, and one other big chunk of people that have supported him have been the Imran Khan, former Prime Minister Imran Khan's supporters, the PTI. They have been celebrating Trump's win as well.
Why have they celebrated Donald Trump's victory? The PTI, that will be of interest to viewers.
Yes, so in a lot of the PTI supporters are in the US. Many of them are expatriates. Much like many of the Hindutva supporters are expats living abroad, enjoying all the benefits of the material goods of being away, but are very, very keenly interested in what happens back home and interfering heavily in the politics as well, even if they are not allowed to vote there, even, and some of them are not. And so Dr. Parvez Hudboy, many years ago, before Trump 2.1, 1.0 actually, before 2016, or just when he came into power or was coming into power, he wrote a piece about the similarities between Imran Khan and Donald Trump, and an article for Dawn. And many of those things that he pointed out, this whole, the strongman savior riding on the back of, actually, if you look at it, on the back of social media, on the rise of social media, all these strongmen saviors, and this is not just Trump and Imran Khan and Modi. This pattern you can see is Bolsonaro, it's the guy in the Philippines. It's like, across the board, you can see that these people have come in because with the rise of social media, allowing people, the audience slash electorate, to directly communicate with the dear leader. So there is this is the, looking at the larger picture, it's the fear of change of society, that women are coming up, LGBTQ rights, trans people are a fraction of the population of anywhere, of our countries, of America, but when you start giving them identity, uh, uh, allow them to express their identities openly, it becomes very threatening to a lot of people.
Okay, Bina. Thanks, Bina. I think we'll come back to some of these issues. But as Mayank said earlier, one presumes that Pakistan, Afghanistan may not figure prominently as of now, definitely in the first few months of Trump 2.0. Let me shift to Mr. Sanadira. You worked in the PMO in Colombo for many years, and you are also a keen watcher of the region and its various undercurrents. Given what Sri Lanka has gone through domestically and the way in which there has been anxiety about the China factor and the American articulation of the Indo-Pacific and issues related to the maritime domain, how do you see Trump 2.0 from your perspective in Colombo?
Colombo's main concern is economy rather than politics. Currently, we are just getting out of an economic abyss. Despite President-elect Trump's and PM Modi's close rapport, I'm sure New Delhi may be worried about major issues like tariff hike and for Indian products, and also technology transfer, especially armament sector. The India is keen to manufacture with the US collaboration with technology transfer. So these things may not go in India's interests at all with Trump's re-election, despite all other personal rapports and increase in bilateral relations in other spheres. Our concerns are mainly exports, but garments is our major export to US. And as far as garment is concerned, we are already paying 17% tax, highest slab. There's no special concessions for us. So there's no change with even if the tariff increases. But we are interested in Trump's policy of strengthening relations with other countries and also Russia. And also his first statement after getting elected about ending the wars. So we are deeply concerned about the wars because they are heavily affecting our economy. Oil prices, Gaza and Ukraine both. If there's an end to these two conflicts, the global trade will heavily benefit. And we, being a small country, non-oil producing nation, so we don't have to pay excess for oil imports. So and furthermore, you see now China, with regard to China, they plan to have closer relations to counterbalance with India as well as Russia. So that might benefit us. Already last month, after the election of the new president, Marxist president of Sri Lanka, one of the major US companies shifted from China to Colombo with $20 million investment. That's a huge thing for us. So such investments, if Trump's policy is to encourage the American investors to shift from China to other countries, that might benefit us heavily. So these are the areas we are more concerned than the politics. Of course, the reduction or ending of the wars would help us immensely. But usually the United States presidents, some of them even they don't even know the Sri Lanka exists. For them, it's a small country. I remember reading Talif Dean's one of the articles that US President Bush once said that he was accused that he didn't know the names of the presidents and prime ministers he meet. So at the US Washington correspondence dinner, he was cracking a joke that, of course, I spoke to the other day Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumartunga, president of Sri Lanka. If I can remember such a long name, I can remember others. So otherwise, America is not much concerned about that. But American envoy Julie Chong here, after the president's election, and she's completing her term this month and returned to Washington. She said that US is very keen to increase the cooperation, especially the shifting of US investments as much as possible to Sri Lanka, and they want to cooperate with the new socialist president of Sri Lanka. So we are facing an election in next week. Next Thursday we have 14th of this month we have the elections. So after that, our policies will be clearer. The president, Dissanayake, has already sent a congratulatory message yesterday. So we are looking forward to Trump's term.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Samitra. I think that's a good overview of the view from Colombo. Tarun, can I request you now to touch upon some of the issues that we haven't had a chance to look at? For instance, Bangladesh, especially the conversion that Bangladesh has gone through and the kind of aspersions cast by the Sheikh Hasina regime about Washington and the so-called conspiracy, etc. All yours, Tarun.
Thanks, Uday, for putting this panel together. Yesterday when the results were coming in and it was clear that Trump was winning, like everybody else, one got a lot of messages from friends, family, etc. And one curious trend that emerged from my messages, which I realized later on, like one of my families said, yeah, I was supporting Kamala Harris, but isn't Trump good for India? And then I realized at least 3-4 people who messaged me had this thing that Trump will be good for India, or a question, isn't he going to be good for India? I think he's going to be good for India. So there is a kind of popular feeling, if might say, or conventional thinking that coming of Trump again as the 47th president will be somehow good for India. And some of these perception is also driven by the chemistry that has developed between the two leaders. And I think Modi was one of the first leaders to call Trump and congratulate him yesterday. I was looking at some of their exchanges in the last couple of months or even years. I find that not just yesterday when Prime Minister Modi congratulated Trump, this always qualified by my dear friend, and which Trump has also done when he, greeted Modi on not the Indian people on during Diwali or even earlier when he talked about India. There's always that qualification about my dear friend, which I'm not sure he does with too many leaders. And as you know, they have already met 4 times in during the last term. Modi was there in Washington, D.C. Then they met in France, and then there was this famous Howdy Modi rally, and then this huge rally in a huge thing in Ahmedabad, where Trump was there. And then he declared in front of 100,000 people that India has a special place in our hearts. So that is what happened in the first term. And yesterday, interestingly, when Prime Minister Modi sent his message, he talked about 4 issues, which are going to be the centerpiece of the relationship: defense, technology, energy, and space. So these are going to be drive the Indo-US relationship forward. But one should also bear in mind that when you think about Trump or you talk about Trump, there are 2 adjectives that come to mind about him. One is that he's very transactional, and the other that he is very unpredictable. So you can expect a lot of that during this term, whether he deals with India or he deals with anybody else. And so even while there's a lot of hope about elevation of the relationship, and that the relationship, which had a strategic partnership, has only become comprehensive strategic partnership. The fact that Trump continues to see China as his principal adversary, the fact that he elevated the level of Quad when he was in his last term. So there is a lot that could happen between India and the US in the coming months and years. Also, I mean, what I would like to point out here when Veena was talking about the results and how people voted, a lot of people thought because of the half Indian ethnicity of Kamala Harris, there will be an Indian American vote, although they have just voting public was just 2.6 million. But there's a substantial Indian American population in some of the swing states, and they will automatically gravitate towards Kamala Harris. That, in fact, did not happen. A lot of the voting was on, the older generation. First of all, what I was looking at the figures.
Arun, sorry, I'll request you to hold your thought.
Okay.
We are coming to the end of this cycle.
Oh,
but I just want to add one, sort of element into the discussion, which is for all of South Asia, immigration is going to be a big issue. How Trump plans to deal with immigration. Arun, you had a point about Bangladesh. You want to come in on that?
Yeah, and it was an interesting message and pretty long message that Trump sent on Diwali, directed at Hindu Americans constituency, where he started by talking about the barbaric violence against Hindus in Bangladesh. And then he went on to talk about the chaos in Bangladesh, which obviously people in Bangladesh didn't like. And then he said that this Biden-Harris administration is not too good about protecting Hindus, and they're ignoring Hindus. And his administration, when it comes, is going to protect Hindus. So the use of his language was very interesting. And obviously, he was trying to kind of divide the Indian American vote, which was never monolithic in that way. But the way he brought in Bangladesh tangentially while talking about Indian Americans and greeting Hindus, especially on Bangladesh, was, I think, a calculated and a little smart move. And I think in that way, the way the Indian American vote went and what little we know of it, the Indian American vote was earlier, during Hillary Clinton's time, 80% of them voted for Hillary. It went down a bit for Joe Biden to 70%. This time only 60% of the Indian American vote went to the Democrats, which was the normal party which they supported, and the rest went to Republicans. And among the Indian American vote, about more men, like the national trend, voted for Trump and citing that he'll be good for business and that he'll lower taxes and he'll deregulate. And the women, of course, like the rest of the national trend, voted for uh, Harris. But talking about, I think the whole attitude of Trump towards the rest of South Asia will be kind of crisis triggered. There is a crisis, he would respond. But other than that, as I think Mayank also pointed out, I don't think he's not being a globalist in that sense, and knowing little about the rest of Asia other than India and China. So he would not pay much attention, but that doesn't mean the State Department won't be engaged. And with Bangladesh being in transition from, autocratic government to now an interim administration and all that, and there has been a lot of talk lately about the US taking undue interest in the changes in Bangladesh. So Bangladesh, I think, would remain on the radar of the Trump administration.
Tarun, I'd just like to add one point here, picking up from what all of you have said. I think it would be fair to say that there is an essential continuity as far as US policy towards South Asia is concerned, by and large. There was a certain amount of attention focused on Afghanistan, but after the withdrawal of the US troops in the Biden watch, I think even that issue is now below the radar. So I think broadly there'll be a continuity, but I do want to request all of you to perhaps share your thoughts on one issue, which Tarun had just mentioned and Veena had said this earlier. This is the Donald Trump use of religion, both within the context of the domestic politics of the United States, reaching out to the born-again Christians, repeatedly in whatever little bit I saw in the campaign, talking about God saved me from that bullet. God wanted me to make America great again. Repeatedly God and the Christian faith. But the dog whistle, when you talk about the Hindus, I'll protect you. And similarly about Israel, and that Donald Trump would protect the Jews. There is the othering of the Muslim. How that will play out as far as the extended South Asian region is concerned. Veena, you want to weigh in on this? And then I'll come to Sanadhira.
Yeah, sure. I think that's a really interesting point. And the really interesting point there is that despite his othering of Muslims, despite his very openly saying he will do mass deportations of brown people, immigrants, despite his open Islamophobia and all that, despite that, you had these Muslim clutches, imams, and people voting for him and saying that he will be better for because of, as we talked about earlier, the war in Gaza and what's going on there, and they were like, the Biden and Harris administration has enabled this genocide over there, and anybody will be better. We cannot reward them for genocide, and we will vote for Trump. And Trump will, and then as there was this meeting of him, I think it was in Michigan, where he's meeting all the imams, shaking hands with them one by one, and I was like, are these? Do they really think he's serious about that? And they were like, we are voting for Trump because he will bring peace to the Middle East. And it's like, and I was thinking, how delusional can people get that in their quest to punish one side, as we say in Urdu, apne paon pe kulhadi marna, to basically cut off your own foot, nose to spite your face, as they say in English. And so we have the same that is one factor that has played into his victory this time as well. And these people are going to very well see what kind of peace he will bring in the Middle East. I, for one, am very highly skeptical of that. I don't think he has any interest in doing that at all.
What about Sri Lanka? How does this play out given Sri Lanka's own challenge with the ethnic strife, and you had the terrorist attack, and how does this dimension play out there?
With regard to Trump's utterances on election campaign, I fully agree with Tarun. You see, you can't predict what he would do. He's a master strategist as far as elections are concerned. He knows how to win elections. Despite all odds against him, twice he managed to win. So his action we can't predict right now. All those, the promises about he has given to the ethnic Indians or anti-Muslims, Jews, and others. But I don't know what he's going to do. But I think he's quite keen on ending these two wars. I don't know how much influence the arms lobby and the armament industry funding his campaign and those things would finally sway his decisions. But still, I feel that he might go in for some sort of negotiated settlement, not only in Ukraine and Gaza also, to at least to have a ceasefire. So that way, I think there's some advantage. Ethnically, I think he's, well, I wouldn't like to say the word, but he's not, he wants to keep America for Americans. So that way, he might continue his policies about cutting down immigrants and other things, especially immigrants not from our part of the world, but mostly from Africa and Muslim countries. So, but at the same time, he might have close cooperation with, he will continue whatever the policies he had adopted in his first term in the 2.02. And Sri Lanka, currently, our government is also currently a bit unstable because although President won with 46-8% majority, but still he has to get the parliamentary majority in next week's general elections. After that, it's a Marxist government we have, but still they have, as far as the economy is concerned, they are ready to have maximum cooperation with the US, and they have already adopted the open economy and continue the deal with IMF.
Thank you. Mayank, I would request you to share your thoughts. I'm sure you've thought about this for a long time. One of the things that has emerged from this election is that Donald Trump's so-called playing up to this anxiety of the white American male and the circling of the wagons, as it were. And clearly, from whatever little bit we've read over the last 24 hours, he's been able to get a very, very robust response from this demography. Now, if you look ahead, is this a point of no return for America? In terms of the earlier image of America as being open, as being inclusive, and being able to accommodate the diversity within the larger American dream. Is that a thing of the past? And we are going to see increasingly the dominance of the white American male, at least as far as the electoral politics of the US are concerned. You want to say something on that?
In terms of electoral dominance of white men, I mean, you probably have a point, but if you're talking about whether the American dream for immigrants is a thing of the past, I don't think so, because you have to remember that all said and done, he's going to last 4 years. And after 4 years, the Republican Party will have to begin to make adjustment to come back to where it used to be in the last 40, 50 years. There is no way they can survive on this policy for an extended period of time. This is in that sense, the way he has managed to create a coalition is a bit of a fluke. I'll tell you why. Because if you look at Hispanic men, they have voted for him very significantly. A lot of young white men have voted for him significantly. In a sense, people don't realize this is essentially a battle of the sexes. It's not been an election in the traditional sense of the word. In fact, one of his advisors, Stephen Miller, actually tweeted saying, "Bring all the men out." He specifically talked about bringing men out at the complete exclusion of women. So I think this is a sort of a freak event that has happened twice. I know it's difficult to digest that a freak event of this scale can happen twice, first in 2016 and now in 2024. But I think overall, beyond 2028, as people like J.D. Vance, who is of course even more doctrinaire than Trump is, but they are in some sense pretty traditional in their worldview. So I don't think it's going to remain the way it is. And one point that I would like to make about, you had asked Bina about Trump's religious propensities. He has none. Trump has no sense of religion. He uses God as a tool. He is, in fact, you wouldn't be surprised if he's in his mind, he's an atheist. I don't think he understands religion in any significant sort of way. He was asked once, which is your favorite Bible verse? And his reply was, any, all. And because he has no clue. He has no clue. So I don't think religion really underpins the way he looks at it. He just pretends. There are a lot
except
of
in a very
pretend.
cynical, I'm saying except in a very cynical transactional way that you use religion for electoral. But Tarun, closing thoughts, we have raised a number of issues. I am personally, my own assessment is a bit bleak. I fear that the discord and the divisiveness in America has gone too deep. It's across race, it's across gender, it's across class, and I don't know that the current political dispensation would be able to provide the kind of healing touch, but I hope I'm wrong. But on that note, I'll defer to you, Tarun. You spend more time in the US than me.
It's I agree with Mayank and also with Bina, but one also has to see the way how cynically you use the immigration issue to divide Americans, not just on race lines, but on even intra-race and intra-religious lines, Even among, as Mayank was saying, the Hispanic vote got divided. The men have supported Trump on the immigration issue, and they want a tougher immigration, and they do not want the floodgates to be opened for more people to come from Latin America or Asia or thing. But this immigration thing, when we talk of closer ties between Indian and America or South Asian America, we always talk about the people who are skilled, the techies, and people who have already prospered, and they are going to prosper even more if the Trump comes in, possibly. That is the hope. But there is a significant aspect or the significant demography who are now trying to go to America in a more circuitous route, not very legal route. And that is going to, and a lot of people from India who are going to join their, bread earners there and unite families, they are going to be affected by the tougher immigration laws that Trump hopes to bring in and wants to bring in on the very first day itself. It's going to divide a lot of Indian families, South Asian families, and others, which I don't think people realize. And also, the Indians are also, in terms of the undocumented population, Indians are the second or the third largest. They've already sent, the US has already sent a plane load of illegal Indians back. Most of them are from Gujarat and some from Punjab. And more would be sent back in the months to come. So that would have a lot of negative impact on the popular perception of what Trump stands for in America.
Let me say again, in defense of President-elect Donald Trump, that when he was asked about this in the last 24 hours, his team, and they made him say this, that he's okay with legal immigration. Those who are qualified, those who are skilled and are bringing something to the US, but he'll be very harsh on the illegals and the undocumented. And my sense, again, it's a gut feeling based on Trump 1.0. On his first day in office in 2017, I think it was January 21st or 22nd, he took the United States out of the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That was his first executive order. So like that, apparently he's told his team that in the first few issues that he wants to give orders, executive orders, immigration, illegal immigration will be on top of the list. And that would have serious, I think, internal repercussions for those families who are affected in South Asia, definitely in India, the Gujarat and Punjab sort of constituency you referred to, and similarly in Pakistan, Bangladesh, perhaps Sri Lanka, Nepal, etc. So on that note, let me thank all of you, Beena, Mr. Senidhara, Mayank, and Tarun. And hopefully, if their time permits and we get enough support for this kind of an effort, we'll try and do this again.
Can I just add one more thing before we close?
30 seconds, Beena, 30 seconds.
Not even. One is immigration. It's not just about illegal immigration, but it's about brown illegal immigrants. That concerned them more. That's one thing. And in terms of how he pulled out of the Trans-Pacific Agreement, so now there's also fears he will pull out of the climate change agreement. So thank you.
He's already pulled out of Paris, if you remember.
Exactly.
But on that note, again, we never say no to a lady. Beena, thanks for that input. And we'll do this again. Thank you, everyone, for watching South Asia Monitor. Do give us your feedback. And if you think there's enough content in this, we'll do it again. Thanks, Mayank.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Boston and Chittaranjan Park. Bye. Good night.